to Ireland. I'll be in Ireland in the beginning of November, but I also will be going to India at the end of the year. In the meantime, though, we do have the Moriel England Conference where I'll be joined by Pastor Tim Leach. That'll be the 25th to the 27th of November. Now, the reason I'm announcing it now is this. The bookings must be in by the 1st of October. The bookings must be in by the 1st of October. So if you are in Britain and you plan to join us, please go to the Moriel website, contact Beryl Hunter, and give her your details. The facility is filling up, but the people who operate the conference facilities need to know ahead how many meals to plan, how many people, fire regulations, and so forth. So we need to have all bookings in by the 1st of October. We're now at the 1st of September, so you have a few weeks. Please book as quickly as possible if you're going to join us. Tim Leach is an excellent, excellent preacher, and he's giving a message I heard him give to a smaller group, a medium-sized group, but I've asked him to give the same message in a more expanded form at the Moriel Conference. We'll be dealing, of course, a lot with the subject of prophecy, so please join us if you're in Britain, particularly England or Wales. The conference is held in the English Midlands, not far from Birmingham, not far from Manchester, not far from Liverpool, but we have people coming from London as well and elsewhere, and some from Wales. So the details, again, are on the Moriel website, moriel.org. In the meanwhile, I'm looking forward to seeing some of you in the United States in the forthcoming few weeks.
Jacob, did I hear you say right, the conference is 25th and 26th of November?
Yeah, in England.
Are you sure?
I think that's it, isn't it?
Is it sure it ain't the 18th and 19th?
Maybe, it may be.
Because you're going to be in India on those days.
Oh, that's right. I've got the India dates mixed up with the conference dates. Yes, it's the 18th and 19th of November for the conference.
Sorry,
November will be in Northern Ireland, Belfast, and vicinity. Possibly Donegal, but announced on the website. Thank you, David.
Yeah, well, I know anybody with 35 different speaking engagements every so often gets mixed up. So anyway, but that's easy to do. But you want me? I guess I'm up next.
I was about to say, you jumped the gun, but I didn't want to leave you without an introduction. The powerhouse that you are, David. Yeah. David Lister is also here.
It's good to be here. Yes, I did want to set Jacob's schedule out a little bit. Starting in September, he will be is our first time speaking up in Wisconsin. One of the guys, a longtime Moriel supporter, and he's got a pastor up there that's going to have us in. It's actually Living Vine Community Church, but we'll actually be at a place called The Barn, 1305 County Road JJ, and that's in Nemaha, Wisconsin. Anyway, that'll be a Saturday time, a 7 p.m. meeting at that road, and then Sunday morning at 11 o'clock we'll be there. The next weekend, which is going to be the 16th, 17th, we'll be out there with Marco and company and all the elders there. And then the following week, Jacob and I are going to be on sort of a quasi-fellowship drive, and we'll announce dates and where we're at soon. And then the following weekend of the 30th and 1st of October, we'll be at John Howler's place. And
we'll be at Fellowship. Fellowship.
FBC, Fellowship Bible Church. And then I'll let you know about Nashville, what we're going to do there. And then the final weekend that he's in, Jacob will be in Baltimore on a Sunday and New York City on a Friday. If I remember right, that's the 14th and 15th of October. And he heads back after that for a long schedule. So I will get this up on the website tomorrow or Monday at the latest. All right.
Sounds good, David. And finally, cannot neglect to introduce my tag team partner in our wrestling format, Ken Smith.
How you doing? Good to see you guys. It's good to be on. Good
to see you, Ken. Welcome. Thank you for filling in. And of course, can't neglect to introduce the man behind the curtains, the Oz of Oz, Davey from Down Under.
Hey, good to be here with you guys.
Thank you for being with us, Davey. I just wanted to go over that we don't have the podcast scheduled for September. We will have that hopefully in the next few days. But we've been doing really great numbers, so we thank you for all those that are downloading our podcasts. Please make sure that you can download them at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever podcasts are. You can download both Catching Up with Jacob and any of the Bible studies, which are great for traveling in the car or going on a plane or just doing work around the house. Please use that resource. Moving into our first topic. Gentlemen, we have talked about this quite extensively, but it just seems to get stranger and stranger. Everything that's going on in Lahaina, I have a video that I'd like to share with you guys.
Anyone else can't see what's going on here in Lahaina, West Maui. There are miles and miles of this black fence going up that was not here before, that is obscuring ground zero and making sure no one can see what's going on inside of there from the road. No one can get in there. No one can take any pictures. And then I've also seen these weird foreign police cars showing up, these special police, I'm not sure what to call them. This is a Nissan, but there's quite a large presence of these standing guard around the perimeter. We've also lost our ability to fly drones really anywhere near this area. Now, this 20-second clip here that I tried to get out of my car and show what was going on, I was almost immediately, after these 20 seconds, National Guard came, chased me off, yelled at me, told me to get back in my car and keep moving. So you cannot pull over. You can't even stop your car anywhere near any of this anymore. Now, I'm going to show you a fairly long clip that shows just how extensive the fencing is on the western side of the main highway here. And
so, to be clear, now we have a section of United States property, United States sovereign territory, not a territory, but a state, that the people, the victims, cannot go and check on their property, cannot go and try to find heirlooms. It's completely restricted, even to drones. And on top of that, special police from out of the country. What's going on here? Ken, talk to me. You grew up in Maui. What are you hearing from your contacts in Maui? What is going on here?
Well, they've been shut out, and it's crazy because at the beginning they were able to, do the drones, and they were able to actually go in, and there was a story of a couple that went in and got their son, their adopted son, that was burned, and they took his body and they took it to the cops, actually, but because they didn't, the morgues are running out of body bags. And then the death toll, they're just they're stopping it at they're freezing it at 115, and there's many people that I've talked to that said it's well in the 400s, if not about 480, almost 500 that they see. But it's just crazy. It's just nuts. It was a land grab. It was, they're just, I don't know how anybody can see it as anything else than that. I mean, the governor was funny. What's his name? John Green. He actually was recording saying "Build Back Better," and that's a saying that we all know. So anyway, yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy because I think we were talking about it before we started the show. The people of Maui,
recording in progress.
The people in Maui have been dealing with this issue of multiple offers on specifically the Lahaina land, which, as we were talking about earlier, was the seat of the royal family before it was moved to Oahu. So it has cultural and historical significance to Hawaiians. and yet the people who owned the land was mostly Hawaiians, where this fire broke out. And now
they were holding out. They were holding out. They were not going to sell. They were not, and that's what they do. They go in and they figure out how to get you out of there, and that's how they got them out of there. It's crazy.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Samuel Dole had something to do with it. All things considered.
Oh man. Yeah.
Jacob, any more insight? I know that you've extensively traveled to Maui and have stayed in Lahaina quite a bit.
Quite a bit indeed, and so has David Lister. Absolutely. It's just in my mind's eye, picturing all the places I know and recollect and have been to so many times, just thinking that they've been reduced to ashes. One thing I recall about Maui, though, was as a historical city, a lot of it had been originally a whaling port, of course, as well as a indigenous capital. And a lot of the construction was lumber. It was made from wood. There was not a lot of brick or steel reinforced concrete construction in Lahaina. Most of the property, and certainly the properties along the beachfront, they were wood. They was just a tinder block, a powder keg, waiting to happen, I suppose. And they knew that. So I wonder why the person who was responsible for sounding the alarm did not do so. We haven't heard anything about that. What is going on? I'm told the person retired immediately the next day for medical reasons or something, but there was a failure to even so much as sound the alarm. It is absolutely astounding. Additionally, why in a very, very blue state are they not blaming it on global warming? That's not what they would normally do. Why? A lot of questions.
Lots of questions. Lots of, and then it's I was talking about this on my podcast, how it's one of the most, if not the most in the U.S. It's the most sirened area. It's got 134 sirens, and none of them went off. And yeah, that's the guy you're talking about, right, Jacob? The guy who
correct.
He resigned or something after some health issue or something, and after he made the decision not to turn them on. Well, they had another fire recently in Kaanapali, and they turned on the sirens, worked fine then. So I don't know. Yeah.
Kaanapali, of course, is high-rise hotels with modern brick and steel construction.
Yeah.
That's not Lahaina, as you know. Lahaina is just a tinderbox.
Yeah. Yes. 100-year-old homes and a lot of just the property's worth a lot of money. You know, you have this this $10,000 home on this $1 million property. So it's crazy. Right. Yep. Got a ton of them.
It's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. The billionaires, the millionaires, the corporations, who gets this money, who gets this land. And it's interesting that Biden gave the residents that have survived $700. It's insulting.
Insult.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that between the Indigenous People Trusts, the Pentagon, and some corporations, some Japanese investors, and the Mormons, there are basically 5 mega property holders in Hawaii, 5, and they control a disproportionately large amount of the real estate. And that includes Lahaina, that includes much of Maui. Only 5 interest groups of the corporations, the Indigenous People Trusts for ethnic Hawaiians, the Mormons, and the Pentagon, and then there's some foreign Japanese investors. They control most of it.
And Ukraine got another 250 million this week. And I hear they're going to make it virtually impossible for people wanting to rebuild to get supplies to the island. They're going to basically make it virtually impossible for them to rebuild. Is that correct, Ken?
Probably.
I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't doubt anything negative that you hear is probably true at this point.
Well, the cost of shipping anything like lumber, like cement, you're looking at the price of getting that to Hawaii in the first place. Everything there is inflated, from gas to food. Everything has to be shipped in by boat. So
does a pineapple or sugar cane add 30 to 50% on top of the normal cost?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Here, the attempts to deliberately block or slow down the shipping of supplies to the island, which wouldn't surprise me.
No, not at all. And then
not at all.
Let's talk about the strangeness real quick of the same sheriff that was in charge of the Las Vegas shooting is now in charge of the Lahaina disaster and the coroner at the same time.
Yes, so I was just going to add that in. Yes, that's. I didn't know if you wanted to go there, but yeah, and it's just asking a question. Don't coroners have like medical degrees? Aren't they supposed to have medical degrees? What this guy, he skipped 2 years or 4 years of working, and he went to medical school. I'm being facetious, but he doesn't have a degree. He just is the coroner, and he stated that in like a public forum. He said, "Oh, by the way, I'm the coroner," and it's like, what? I didn't even know that.
It's not legal, by the way, for
no,
you to
it's not.
Be the sheriff and be able to declare the cause of death.
And you wonder why they've frozen. Yeah, they've frozen the amount of dead at 115. I keep seeing this number one. I keep waiting for it to go up. And I've gotten from personal sources that it's up near 480, 500. It's up there. That the bodies that they've recovered. There may be some bodies that have just incinerated because it was so hot. But I know that there's still over 1,000 people. There's 1,200, 1,100 people missing still. So.
I had a business partner with a house up country who was on Maui at the time, and he said that the casualty figures are probably even higher than that, but they're not telling people. Yeah,
and then that's the locals that they're given the information, and it's like you can't even get if you have a Starlink, you can get that's one of the guys that I'm in contact with. He has a Starlink, and he's online, and he's posting videos and stuff, but. Yeah, I think their internet's down.
Island wide, huh?
Yeah. No, just in that area, in Lahaina. Yeah, you have to go up on the hill. He's been going up a hill to send people texts and stuff like that. So, yeah, they've shut it down, man. I mean, that was one of my. It's an enforced media blackout. They're building this big black fence. That's why at the beginning you saw the drone footage and the guy was walking down, the guy that I know I'm not going to mention his name, but he was walking downtown and he was just going, he has a 4-hour video. He walked every street and to show the damage and walked along Front Street. And it's really, I mean, I was like, oh, I know that area. Yeah. It was really sad.
You know, the tunnel that links Kahului that goes through the mountain?
Yes.
Going towards Lahaina.
Yeah, right before.
All you'd have to do is turn that into a gate, and you've sealed off. Off.
Well, they kind of did that at first.
There's no other way in or out unless you go all the way around.
Yeah, and that's what my guy did. I talked to one of my guys who was there. I actually had a client who was there, and he called me. He went up to a hill. He found reception, and he called me. He says, "Kenny, I need to get out. How do I get out?" I go, "You got to go around Hana." And he went the opposite way. That you couldn't go through Lahaina, obviously, but he went around on that side of the island. And he goes, "Oh, cool, I'm good." But there was a whole bunch of people that were trying to get out. And there was one girl that I'd mentioned on my show that she worked at the Puamana, which is kind of like a retirement and kind of a built-up facility on the south side of your north and south. And it's like, she could go straight out and go on Highway 30 right there. Well, she was blocked off. And then she had to go all the way into Lahaina. They forced her to go. And she finally was like, I'm gonna die if I do this. And she followed a 4-wheel drive truck out back onto the Puamana. The Highway 30. And if she didn't do that, she would have been caught. There was like all these people doing. There was a lot of TikTok videos out about people that were filming in their car, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. We're being turned around, and this cop's blocking this, and blah blah blah. And it was just crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
these people,
Shake your head.
These people need to obviously there needs to be some kind of ramification legally for the incompetence, first of all, of how this situation is being handled, but also for the endangered life that, like you say, they've been blocking out exits.
Yes, they blocked the south, they blocked the north, they blocked South Lahaina and North Lahaina, and they had to, there's tons of stories. There's tons of stories. Guys going 4-wheel driving, just going through parking lots and other things. Yeah. So it's just ridiculous.
Yes.
Speaking of consequences, that brings us to our next topic. The top law schools are being taught to ditch the Constitution in favor of critical race theory. Harvard and all of the other Ivy League legal schools have been pushing this CRT for the past decade. And we've really seen how that has affected our legal system. But now it seems that, the law being the foundation of our country is the Constitution. And if the people who are supposedly stewards of that law, attorneys, judges, are buying into something that undermines the Constitution, where does that leave society? Jacob, I'll start with you. Why is the law undermining itself at this point?
Well, obviously, we've been moving away from dictatorship. The concept of an independent judiciary was not to be a judiciary that can legislate from the bench. That was the first step, when you had agendaist judges legislating from the bench and issuing decisions that effectively were legislation. They were issuing statute. This took place on a state level, like state Supreme Courts. State Supreme Courts ordering state legislatures to rewrite laws and telling them what has to be in it. That was just the beginning of it. It was not all of a sudden. It was something that was, of course, progressive. Secondly, liberal establishment will exploit things like race and women's rights and climate change, anything. They'll use anything they can as a front, as an excuse to push the real agenda. The issue is not really race. The issue is how we can use race to dismantle the democratic process. That's what is happening. It's obviously not going to benefit minorities or benefit anybody except for the elites that hold the power. But that is essentially what is happening. I believe the battle that we saw in the judiciary with the appointment of judges, like the Kavanaugh hearings, I think that was a constitutional battle, but I think there was a spiritual battle on back of it. You had enemies of the Constitution, enemies of justice, enemies of rule by law instead of rule by political correctness. People like Feinstein, just a wicked old woman, and that Horona, that senator from Hawaii, that a woman has a right to be believed. The man is guilty if he's accused by a woman simply because the woman has a right to be believed. Just a wicked woman who ought to die in federal prison. She's an enemy of the Constitution. You have actual enemies of the Constitution in Congress and Senate, but you also have them in the courts themselves, and you have them, of course, in the most prestigious of law schools. That is what is happening. It is just part and parcel of the de-democratization of the Western world, because it is turned against biblical principles and against the God who gave the freedom. Man's laws are no longer based on God's laws, and freedom does not come from God, it comes from government. That is the mentality of it, and that is essentially what is transpiring. But it is in no way peculiar to the United States. It is even more so in other countries, particularly, most notoriously, Canada. But just look at what's happened this past week when one of the indictees with Donald Trump in Georgia could not get bail because the judge went on vacation and another magistrate decided not to set bail. Now, by state law, within 24 hours, he has a right to bail, but they just decided for political reasons not to give it to him. It means nothing. It just means nothing. you have the FBI acting like a criminal organization, which it is. The FBI has no more integrity than any other organized criminal organization anymore. They've acted criminally against the Constitution. This is essentially what is happening. So, yes, it is definitely in Yale law and Harvard law. That is true. That is absolutely true. But that is simply one manifestation of a cancer that goes much deeper in both the legislature and the judiciary and the media.
David, do you have any further comments on the CRT introduced into to our legal schools and how it's undermining the Constitution?
Well, ever since Rules for Radicals came in back in my day as a teenager, it's been a downward spiral for our republic. And no longer do we teach civil government in schools, but we're teaching these obscene theories to cripple people's minds about one of the best government systems that there's ever been. And so the downward slide is probably irreversible now because of, like you said, they've been teaching this for 10 years, and now we've got on top of this DEI and also the ESG. All these things are affecting every part of our life, and it's all meant to spiral us down to a feudal system. America's people are so under the weight of our economy right now. 61% of Americans are only living paycheck to paycheck, and it's not going to get better.
Ken?
Brace for impact. I'm bracing for impact.
Yeah.
I saw things that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, didn't really think much of it. Now it's just the last 3-4 years has been insanely accelerated. So I'm just bracing for impact and hoping the Lord comes back and soon and and just I think we're gonna have to go through some rough times though for a little bit. So just bracing.
On the subject of tougher times, have you guys heard about this EU's social media censorship laws that are now official? In 2022, the Disinformation Code contains a 44 commitment. When a company becomes a signatory, it submits that, among other things, to defund the dissemination and disinformation of misinformation. That's a word. That's a word salad. But who gets to determine what constitutes disinformation? A group of faceless bureaucrats and unelected officials on the other side of the world in Europe. The greatest thing that I think that we had in my generation, being Gen X, was we had the start of the internet, and it was the Wild West. You could go there and you could say whatever you wanted. You could look for whatever you wanted. And it really was a place where you had absolute, almost libertarian freedom. And it's been edging more and more into social control. So I'd just like to maybe start with you, David. How can something that was supposed to have so much hope for humanity to establish freedom and rights be turned to such a tool for totalitarianism?
Well, Ben Franklin said it best long time ago. He said, "We've given you a republic if you can keep it." Americans, we got fat, sassy, as it were. We took everything for granted and we let our guard down. Ever since Dewey brought into the Humanist Manifesto into our education system and started making generations of non-critical thinking people, even people that go back to comedians whose name just escapes me, but he made fun of how people were not critically thinking anymore. And so you can't even debate anybody. Everybody is now running on their feelings, and their feelings become a truth. And feelings can change from one day to the next. So when there is no truth, no rock to stand on, as the old song says, all other ground is sinking sand. And they call themselves progressives, these people that are pushing this, and this goes back to the 20s when even J. Edgar Hoover warned everybody about the communists and the progressives. The progressives are basically just patient communists trying to deconstruct our country, and it's working, and people are asleep.
Yes. Actually, also as an intellectual movement, these were the Fabians. The Fabians foresaw this, and purely in terms of parlance, literally meeting in a parlor and talking. These left-wing socialist thinkers, Sidney and Beatrice Webb, and these people who influenced George Bernard Shaw and so forth,
Yep.
They were talking about making this happen long-term, exactly along the lines it's happening through progressivism. But I would agree that John Dewey was a pivotal figure in the advancement of this into the school system, how to destroy critical thought.
Yep.
Ken, any thoughts on where we're heading with technology as far as social media, the internet, the free exchange of information?
I think the situation, the whole, like David was talking, he went back to the 1920s, and Jacob went back to the 50s and 40s, 50s, 60s. And I was thinking of a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And it's by Charlotte Isobert. And she was in the Reagan administration. I think she was in education. And she literally goes through the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and how it progressively just got worse and worse. And what's the book of Revelation say? It just starts, going. It's the techie, right? Right, Jacob? The Greek word is techie. It's the like tech, where we get the word for tachometer. And it just keeps going faster and faster.
Momentum of its own, a self-perpetuating momentum of its own. Yes,
and I think we're in that zone right now, and I think it's just going to keep going. And I just think that we're just going to not, we just have to not accept it. We have to stand up against certain things, but we got a long road ahead. It's just that before the Lord comes back, we got a long road ahead.
I'm just wondering how long it's going to take for our social media and tech overlords to determine that Christianity as a faith is misinformation.
Yeah.
That seems to be where we're heading.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Moving on to our next topic, we have the BRICS. They've expanded their global footprint. Following the 15th annual BRICS Summit, which was held in Johannesburg, South Africa this week, the bloc of 5 major emerging economies have announced the admission of 6 new members: Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, Argentina, and the UAE. The new bloc represents roughly 46% of the world's population and accounts for 29% of the world's gross domestic product. David, can you tell me what you foresee with this ever-expanding BRICS movement and global community?
Okay, well, there's been a real big debate about the feasibility of BRICS currency, okay? But there's been some theories around 25, 30, 40 years ago that, would say things, look, first they use oil to buy gold, then they use oil to buy dollars. And so that came in. But what has happened is that oil now functions as the true gold in this modern world. And so when the world started needing oil, which, for the gold, it was dropped as backing a US dollar, and was that gold was dropped, and then they replaced it with oil. And so most people today see fiat currency. They look at fiat currency and they look through the US dollar as like the center of everything. But that's sort of like, that's not the best way to do it, because the real base layer of our global financial system is not the US dollar, it's energy. Oil is the real value here. And while this is an old theory, but it makes sense to now, because when you look at this new BRICS formula, they've gathered 50 to 51% of the oil exporters into this. Now you think, well, how could that bother us? Well, those of us that are old enough, we remember the cartel that cut the tap off to America, and we were in a bit of a mess for a while and everything. And so the thing is that when these guys can cut off the oil or charge what they want, we have to understand that our money is based as a fiat currency, and then we're borrowing all this money, but it's really the supply of oil that will drive us, with the exception of gold, and maybe some people say the Bitcoin. Every asset, all my assets that I have in a portfolio, every asset you have in your pension fund, its value, its evaluation is based on the supply of cheap oil. Okay. When Russia took 1/3 of their oil off the global markets, inflation started going up, and it's going back up again. And so we're seeing all these problems. And so now that they control 50% of the global export market, what can they do? They can import inflation into America. There's no more cheap oil. We're not going back down to $50 oil or $40 oil with this current administration to pump the pipe, start turning on, because the cost of production has gone up. America has been shutting down pumps that at $80 oil. They should be selling it if they can make money at $80 in oil, but they can't. And so since they control oil prices, they'll have control over our inflation, which means they have control over our U.S. treasuries. They'll be able to control how much we pay and how much it'll be. And so the federal government will not be able to control inflation. They'll not be able to do anything. And all they have to do is turn down the spigot a little more and turn the price of oil up. And then everything we buy is going to get higher. And the only way to stop it is, well, look, we could actually start pumping again, but we're going to be pumping high dollar oil. So all fiat currencies, all global prices, all stocks, bonds, all of that is valued on cheap oil. I'm sorry, this stuff is not good. And then also you have the Saudis and the United Arab Immigrants. They're building bridges to everybody. And China's working to rebuild Saudi Arabia and Iran and get them back together. And so now we have all this pressure that's coming on us. People, you should be praying, getting ready. Yeah. Oil is the base layer of all our so-called monetary system, not U.S. dollars. Does Washington understand this? No, we got a president that's asleep at the wheel. And, if you want to see a real hockey stick type graph that shows you how oil has become so important, 100 years ago, we needed about 10,000 trilliwatts of power. How much does the world consume now? 160,000 trilliwatts of power, energy. Energy is the new brick currency. That's my opinion. That's old theories and everything, but I think it shows us a problem that the world is in right now.
In the short to medium term, I agree with David Lister. In the short to medium term, of course, the United States, would take the United States 5 to 10 years to produce sasol plants like South Africa has to turn coal into a form of petroleum. It can be done, but it's not going to happen overnight. We can increase production. To some degree, the United States and Canada can immunize themselves in terms of independence, but because it's a global market, they cannot control the prices. In all of these things, I agree with David. Additionally, you have the stupidity of the present administration, and which is basically Obama's third term. You've got lightweights like Blinken, who nobody takes seriously in international affairs. You've got Jake Sullivan, who's again somebody who's a lightweight, who nobody takes serious. In the economic sphere, you have a blithering idiot, Janice Yellen, just a blithering idiot. You have Powers, who's another useless tool. We have an incompetent administration and a senile president. This is all very true. This exasperates it. And these BRICS things would not be happening in the way they are, or to the degree they are, if it were not for Joe Obama. However, that is the short to medium term. I'd like to just make a prediction. I'm not saying a prophecy. I'm saying a prediction. Call it sanctified deduction, but I'm not saying thus saith the Lord. I'm just reading from Revelation chapter 6. When he broke the third seal, I heard the third living creature come. I look and behold a black horse, and he who sat upon it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard, as it were, a voice in the center of the four living creatures. A quart, that is a denarius, a day's wages of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. Do not harm the oil. That oil, of course, is not petroleum. And the wine. Do not, but it's talking about grain products. It is my prediction that not in the short term, but in the medium to long term, what David is saying about oil, energy units, is going to become true about food. China is in trouble. China, it is in trouble in terms of food production and agriculture. It's a mess. It rivers everything. The whole agronomic system of China is just an underreported disaster on top of their other problems. What you see happening with the Ukraine and with the steps of South West Europe, now you have the grain shipments not coming through the Dardanelles, from the Black Sea. Notice that the BRICS conference did not address Ukraine. Putin didn't show up, and they did not address the implications of this grain shortage for Africa. It was not even addressed at the BRICS conference in Johannesburg. I have no doubt that the people in Washington and in New York, they're going to say, how can we keep on top when these things are happening? These guys have BRICS, they don't have to worry about democracy because most of the countries who dominate BRICS are not democracies.
Right.
Partial exceptions of India and Brazil, but Saudi Arabians don't care about democracy. Russia, China, they're not democratic countries. They can do what they want. They don't have to worry about public opinion, votes, elections, anything like that. Okay. And they have a large market. And Africa is the one place in the world without a demographic time bomb based on shrinkage. They have a demographic time bomb based on population explosion. It's still heading that way. So what's the solution? What is something the United States, Canada, to a degree Australia can do that can dominate the world economy that other countries cannot presently compete with, especially with the demise of what's happening in Ukraine? That is food. That is food. And that is one of the reasons why the West wants the Ukraine war. It drives up grain prices and it drives up the economic power of the United States. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen short to medium term. In the short to medium term, I do agree energy is going to be a very major factor. But in the medium to long term, from what I can see in the book of Revelation, it is going to be food.
Yep.
And another factor is going to be water, but I digress.
You know, it's interesting, Jacob. Canada has so much fresh water. They hold something like, I think, 30 or 40 or 50% of the world's fresh water. And they're the fourth largest exporter of oil in the world. But yet they're run by a communist, basically, Trudeau. And I don't know how much they want to help. They seem to be in the pocket of a China and the enemy of truth.
Trudeau's in the pocket of Schwab.
Yeah, there you go.
He's the Schwab
6 of 1
Schwab
who's in the pocket of the Chinese.
Ken, anything to add?
I was just going to say, he just brought up Canada. Canada's having fires, and I just watched a video of them trying to deliver products, and they were stopping the boats from delivering products to the people that stayed in the area. And they had 2 cops that were careening in the pontoon boat that was just full of products, and it finally got through. And they unloaded it real quick, and they went back. They were just doing that, and that's the only way they can come in is through the water. And I just watched the video, and it was just sad. I think Marco sent it to me. It was just sad to see that that's what they were doing. But yeah, that's it. Just yeah.
Well, I cannot give up a segue like Jacob just gave me. I am going to jump to one of our topics that we're supposed to be after. But this specifically deals with what Jacob's talking about, the control of food.
Food.
And give me 1 second. I'm just going to share my screen.
Yeah.
And we'll bring this one.
Can I say something real quick?
Go for it.
Okay. So I was reading Michael Yon, and he's written a couple books, and he's on Twitter, and he's a great guy to follow. But he talks about pandemic, famine, war. And they always follow pandemic, famine, war, and you can go back in history and see that it's the trifecta. And so when Jacob's talking about the famine, and then obviously we're looking at a war coming. So and pandemic started it. So it's just always pan, fam, war. That's the way I look at it. So
yeah. And it's going to be tough, though. You know, I know I built my theory on energy, and I absolutely agree with Jacob that food is going to be the barometer to manipulate and keep people down and everything. But worldwide exchange of products in a famine and what they're purposely setting up is going to be quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Food, energy a weapon, food a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
They'll control the world.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's talk about how Canada, how they control food and what kind of control that they do.
Hey guys, we're here at Higginbo's Farm in southern Ontario. We milk about 260 cows. Right now during the winter months, you milk quite a bit more milk because the feed is very consistent. And as you do a good job, you will produce quite a bit of milk. So, but right now we're over our quota. It's regulated by the government and by the DFO. But the problem is what they don't understand is millions of people look at this milk running away because it's the end of the month. So I have to dump 30,000 liters of milk. It breaks my heart. I will show you. By the way, this here, Canadian milk, it's $7 a liter. When I go for my haircut, people say, wow, $7, Jerry, for a little bit of milk. I say, well, you have to go higher up because we have no say anymore as a dairy farmer on our own farm because they make us dump it. And no matter how we stand up, so this time I'm going public. I want the people to see the pain that us growers have of 365 days as a little boy, we grew up on a dairy farm, came from Europe, work, and here we are. This is what's happening.
So, don't actually turn it into cheese. Don't turn it into a commodity that can be stored and saved for times of lean times, but dump it. This is government control of your food supply. Welcome to the dystopian paradise that is the clown world today. Jacob, you were just talking about how food, the Bible predicts, astronomical prices for wheat in the future. But is it any surprise when you have governments dictating to dump milk, which can be turned into numerous commodities as far as food?
Just dump it. Make cheese, ice cream, freeze it, whatever, and they're not doing that. They just rather let it go to waste.
Try it and ship it to Africa.
To keep prices artificially high. No other reason.
It's stunning to see the waste, and they talk about environmental disasters. They talk about clean energy. They talk about trying to save the planet. I don't think anything harms the planet more than wasting the resources God has put on the planet for us.
But of course, underlying this is the World Economic Forum policy. Essentially, it's a policy of reducing the bovine population globally. They want to reduce the number of cows in the world.
David?
It's just, I was saying earlier, it's a debased mind. They can't think straight. It's people that have rational thought can think, and these people have irrational thought.
Anything to add, David?
Well, I've seen government regulate prices, and they always get higher. $7 for a liter of milk is incredible. Here in Tennessee, we pay like $3 a gallon. So, there's something wrong with the government that's doing that. More so when they're letting they're just letting it go down the drain. That you're right, Ken. They have a wicked, evil mind. Mm-hmm. I remember drinking powdered milk as a kid because they brought it over to Guam, so they can make it into powdered milk. And just imagine that here we could be sending milk to third world nations and helping them, but no, let's destroy the milk.
Whatever happened to government cheese? I guess there's no such thing anymore.
Not anymore.
Just government rats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of those.
Yeah.
Where's the exterminator?
Yeah.
You wonder how people in Canada can be so stupid as to vote for an enemy of democracy. If I was a Canadian, I would see him as an enemy of Canada and of the Canadian people. But by international standards, he's an enemy of democracy, like Trudeau. Why would people vote for someone like him? But I could ask the same question about Biden and Obama, couldn't I?
Yes.
And for most of the Democratic leaders, over there, you guys got problems in the Parliament and Ireland and Scotland, and it's the same problem everywhere.
It is, because in Britain you have supposedly a Tory, a conservative government, and they're grossly incompetent, and they're doing everything the left does.
Yeah.
Same over here. Same with the Republicans. Yep, it's a uniparty. I think that's how it forms, and then we'll have Antichrist take over,
That's
all right, our next topic. Jacob, Jordan Peterson just had a verdict in court. The court decided that his rights were violated by the Association of Psychologists. But they also the court states that they had the right to violate his rights. Can you unpack this madness coming from the legal system?
What obviously it is what we spoke about earlier, deconstitutionalization. We can violate your rights because we disagree with you. So even though what we're doing is legally wrong, we can do it because we disagree with you. And the court system is going to support us in that. That is no court system at all. That is a Stalinist court system. That is not a democratic judiciary. This is what you've got. I'm simply saying that Canada is further down the road than the United States and Britain. But the United States and Britain are going the same way. Canada is just further down the road. It's absurd. It's insane. Your rights have been violated. The court rules your rights have been violated, but they had a right to do it.
I thought rights were not allowed to be violated.
If I was to drag a left-wing judge out by the throat, hold them down by the hair, and saw their head off, and say, I'm violating your rights, but because I disagree with you, I have a right to do it. What would people say?
Yeah, that was just a picture, not a real threat or anything like that.
Yeah.
That was just an analogy.
What would people say if someone did that? Well, if they have the right to violate someone's rights because they disagree with them, why don't I have a right to violate yours because I disagree with you?
Yeah.
The thing is on.
The thing is, they're going after Jordan Peterson again, and now they blew it the first time. I don't know what's going to happen this time.
Got to go to re-education camp.
Yeah.
Most people may not know that, but that happens in Chinese countries and stuff. They take you to a camp and they turn your mind inside out. There's a real good scene. There's called The Last Emperor. It's in a movie. And they take the last emperor and they put him in a re-education camp. And if you watch that movie, it's a little bit long and slow, but it was real. I thought it was interesting as they showed you what a re-education camp did and what happened to their emperor. How he became he went from the last emperor to being an ardent supporter of communism.
Yep.
Wow.
I prefer the Red Dawn analogy of the re-education camp. You know, the local drive-in turned into a place where you just hear propaganda 24 and you never get to sleep.
Non-stop. And avenge me.
Yeah.
Talking about avenging an gross injustice, Jacob, asylum seekers in the UK are giving preference to diversity over the native population, uncontrolled immigration to England, and on top of that, taking social benefits from the taxpayer to house these.
It's worse than that. This is a Tory or conservative government, not conservative in the sense of Churchill or Thatcher. This new conservatism, this the Hindu prime minister who celebrates Diwali in number 10 Downing Street. I do believe there's a spiritual curse on back of what is happening in British government because of the worship of idols and so forth, and the nation turning its back on its Judeo-Christian heritage. The First Minister of Scotland is a Muslim. The Taoiseach of Ireland is a Hindu. The Prime Minister of Great Britain is a Hindu. The Mayor of London is a Muslim, and a vicious political figure on top of it. This is God's judgment on a nation that turns its back on its God. Britain is under foreign occupation by Islamic forces. Most of these refugees coming in are Muslims, demanding social benefit. Now understand what they see the social benefit as. They see it as Jezra. They see it as demitude. They see it as the infidel having to pay a tax to the Muslim for not being Muslims. That's how they see it. That's how the Muslim mind sees it. You need to support us because we're Muslims. You have to pay a penalty because you're not a Muslim, you're an infidel. That is their mentality. That's why they come to Britain in large part. But now something absurd is happening. It is the end of summer, the beginning of the academic year in universities, schools, colleges. Students who've already paid for university dormitory facilities are being refunded their money and told to go find private housing near the universities because dormitory facilities that they paid for, have already paid for, are being taken by the British government and given to Muslim asylum seekers. This is an outrage. This is an outrage. And this is a supposedly conservative government. Britain is under God's judgment. There's no question about it. The Church of England clergy acknowledges that Britain is no longer a Christian country. It's, as David Pawson warned, becoming a Muslim country. This is exactly the book of Jeremiah type scenario. That's exactly what's happening. It's happening. It happened in the days of Jeremiah, and it's happening now. I've addressed this week on Word for the Weekend on RTN, which will be on Moriel TV in a few days. It's unbelievable. Can you imagine British students paid for dormitories so they have somewhere to stay on campus for their studies, being given the money back and being told to go find your own accommodation somewhere else off campus because we've given the room that you paid for to Muslim refugees who should be going to Islamic countries if they're really refugees. But instead they're coming to England to get the demi, to be supported by the infidel. And the British government's going along with it. You have a mayor of London who's a vicious figure politically, and he's a Muslim. And he's made some outrageous statements that the British people have to acquiesce to. You got a Muslim boss. It's God's judgment. Britain is under God's judgment.
You know, it reminds me, how long is it going to be before they tear down the Richard the Lionheart statue? I believe that's in front of Parliament, because he lost the battle to Salahuddin, and now, like Jacob says, there's occupation of England. So maybe it began back then. Who knows? Just wanted to also go to our next topic. Jacob, to your point, with the Muslim occupation of the UK, and you have the further asylum seekers immigrating in, the Anglican clergy has made an announcement. And the announcement is England is no longer a Christian country.
Yep.
When is that pivotal point where we went from UK being a Christian country to what it is today?
It was progressive over a period of time. Again, I addressed it, and I addressed the process on Word for the Weekend, which is on RTN as of Saturday and will be on Moriel TV immediately afterwards, and we go into it. There was no one point, but there were a series of events, one of which was when you had an Archbishop of Canterbury who's a practicing Druid, who's a member of a Druid sect. Now, the pagan Druids, as in Stonehenge, etc., they were the original opponents of Christianity in Britain. Now you've got the head of the state national church, who was one. That would have been a turning point. George Carey would have been another one, with his holy sites, marching with Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists to consecrate holy sites to the worship of other gods. And Carey at one time professed to be a born-again Christian. I confronted him once, and we had it out, but I didn't get too far with him. But I confronted him. There was no one point, but there was a series of events. What's really frightening is this sample of 1,200 clergy, which is a good representation. You're going to get a good statistical analysis of the opinion of the Anglican clergy and presbytery from 1,200 samples. They say that to stop this decline and the rapidly nosediving church attendance, it's old people. It's just old people going by tradition in most of these churches. The way to stop the decline is liberalize our policies on same-sex marriage, lesbian and homosexual ordination, put the church's blessing on premarital sex, including homosexuality. These are the things the clergy is calling for to stop the decline. What I compare it to is like an alcoholic experiencing delirium tremens, DTs, or a junkie going through cold turkey, or a barbiturate addict doing it cold. Look at me, I'm having withdrawal, I'm going cold. It's all your fault. You won't give me any more smack. If you gave me some food, this wouldn't be happening. If you gave me another drink a whiskey, I wouldn't be having the shakes. You know, the very thing that caused the problem to begin with, they're looking upon as a cure. It's total insanity. Only this is supposedly the church.
I wanted to follow up with you, David. You've done fellowship drives. You've heard from many people that are searching for churches. My question to you is, you have the Anglican clergy declaring that England is no longer a Christian nation. How far do you think we need to go down the road for America's clergy, whether they come from any denomination, declaring the same for here and embracing the same tactics that Jacob's talking about? The normalization of homosexuality, transgenderism, CRT.
Yeah, I would say, look, we're right on their heels, because Southern Baptists, I was raised in Southern Baptists, and now they're saying that we have to be advocates, that Christians should be the advocates for LGBTQ. I get lost in the letters, so anyway. And that's Southern Baptist. That's one of the largest and was one of the most conservative one time, but now that's gone. The Methodists are totally gone. Then a lot of our church are NAR and hyper-Pentecostalism or hyper-charismaniac nonsense. And the infiltration into a bad theology into so many churches, we're right there. And then the churches that do try to hold to a knowledge of the truth, the theology in them is 1 inch deep. You know, it's just milk, week in, week after. And so I'd say that we don't have enough, and people can disagree with me, but I don't know that the church has even the ability to hold back evil anymore. I'm thankful that the Holy Spirit will always do his job and resist evil. But even we know that day is coming to an end. But Jacob, you can disagree. I think we're so backslidden, we're not far behind you.
No, America's going the same way as Britain.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. There's no question about it.
Yeah,
I've seen us catch up. We've caught up. We're catching. It's like where Britain was so far ahead, and now we've caught up. I don't know, the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've caught up to where we're right there.
But God has his people. Remember that.
Amen.
Stay
Amen.
faithful to the end. Just
Amen.
keep holding on. Hold on tighter. Keep looking for him and be ready. He's coming for a purified bride. And I just want to encourage everybody. It may not be a lot of us, but God has his eye on us. And he is the God that never sleeps nor slumbers. And he is at work to this day. So he cares for us, and he'll help get us through.
I'd also point out, yes, that's true, but I'd also point out in Britain and America and elsewhere that it is the failure of the supposedly true church, the believing church,
Yes.
the regenerate church, to be salt and light that has allowed this to happen.
Yes.
Satan has his agents. He has his fifth column. There are people in the body of Christ who are false brethren or backsliders or whatever you want to call them, who work for the devil. I have no problem saying Stephen Furtick works for the devil. I have no problem saying that Andy Stanley works for the devil. I have no problem saying Rick Warren works for the devil. And Tim Keller was no better. I have no problem saying that about these people. These are agents of Satan. These are people who have a message from hell that they've introduced among supposedly regenerate believers. Satan has infiltrated the church with false teachers, with false prophets, and false brethren. And some of the leading figures in the so-called evangelical world are their ranks.
Yep. Jesus told us that there would be many false prophets and false teachers in this last day. And I've said this several times to Jacob, that, we used to keep up with the false teachers. We knew them, who they were. now there's such an explosion of them. No one can keep up with all of them everywhere. People write us all the time. What about this guy? What about that guy? You know, so
when J.D. Greer, when the president of the Southern Baptist Union calls upon believers to be the number one advocates for homosexual and lesbian rights, which in their mind is the right to indoctrinate your children and grandchildren. And the president of the Southern Baptist Union calls for this at their convention, and there's no uproar. There's no split. It's finished. It's finished.
yeah.
The best thing the Southern Baptists can do is put a gun to the head and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Can I
watch the Methodists. I watch the Methodists do that.
I wanted to ask you a question real quick, Ken. Knowing your background, knowing the NAR, I just wanted to ask you really quickly about this topic. How many of the people that are in the NAR are aware of where they're heading as far as, do they see these problems within the church? The vacillating and just bowing down to get people into the seats, whatever, come as you are, no matter what, don't even believe in Christ, don't even be sanctified.
I think there's a certain, I call it the scale of NAR, and there's a deep state NAR. I kind of, there's the people that are really involved, and then people that are, maybe they would get out if they just had a little bit of revelation. But I can't believe how much depth it's gone down to where it's I'm trying to think of the word. It's just crazy. That's all I can say. It's just yeah.
All right.
The NAR, I'd have to get into a lot of things to get into it, but I don't want to get into it. So it's just the people are so deceived right now, and that's what Jesus said in Matthew 24. Do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. I learned this from Jacob a long time ago. 4 times he talks about 4 times deception, 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 deception. And I think it's so great right now. And I do believe that weakens the church's impact, and Jacob and David going, to houses. I think that I think that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be worshiping in littler areas, and there ain't going to be no mega churches. And if it's a mega church, it's going to be totally, their
devil's going to be in charge.
Yeah, their doctrine's going to be way off. Yeah.
Just a reminder to everyone, we will be going to Backstage very shortly after this next story. Catch us on Rumble, on Moriel TV, to hear both the questions that you've turned in, and also to hear our special bonus stories. You will not be able to catch them on YouTube because YouTube would immediately ban us. So, be sure to go to Backstage on Rumble, on Moriel TV, and the other platforms that carry it. I want to close with this last story. Going back to the UK, the UK has carried out the first ever womb transplant, as a sister has donated her uterus to her younger sister. The recipient of the womb was diagnosed with Mayer-Rutansky-Kuster-Hauser disease, a rare condition that impacts the woman's reproductive system. Gentlemen, I'm going to open it up to the first one that would like to talk about this. How far of an overreach is this with what God has intended? If we look through the Bible, it has always been that God, even when people could not necessarily have children, we look at Sarah, we look at Rachel, we look at Hannah, the women had to go to prayer, and they had to have faith that God was the giver. Now we have man doing that. So
I'm still very skeptical that even after such a transplantation, that a full-term pregnancy or even a conception would be possible. And if it is, it would not likely last very long as a conception. But even if that were not the case, if it is a female to female transplantation procedure, that would be one thing. What's going to happen is you're going to see transgender males wanting to become women and be able to facilitate childbirth. They are going to try to push this. They're going to demand more funding for biomedical research to make it possible to have impregnation with this kind of transplantation. And you're going to see biological males wanting to be mothers. That is what I think it'll come to.
Ken?
I just I think it's going back to the debased mind, and because they're actually, it's like Jacob said, I forget what I was listening to one time, but he said you could go up to one floor, they're doing abortions, and the other floor they have babies in incubators. And that's all I got to say is what do you guys want to do? Do you want to kill them, or do you want to keep them? You know, and then that one Twitter thing that we were watching, the guy said
We'll get to it.
Yeah,
let's
definitely.
Not let the cat out of the
Give
bag.
it away.
Yeah.
Let's not let it out right now.
Yeah, but it's crazy that it's a debased mind. Again, it seems to be the theme of the show. It's just, theme of the world, the way the world's going.
Well,
so
that's truly said there. The world has lost its literal mind.
But Jesus said that it would be like that. Paul wrote about it, and Jesus said it. So,
all right. Without further ado, in case you think that Jacob is a little extreme in his prognostication, we have a video for everyone. Give me 1 second. So I bring it over here. And actually, I think I need to do a share so you get the audio. There we go.
This is a picture of a turned over mind.
The first trans.
Absolutely. So this gentleman wants to be the first man to receive a uterus, and let's see what he wants to do with that.
Trans woman to have a successful uterus transplant, ovaries and eggs included, and I want to be the first trans woman to have an abortion.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. He wants to go through a very complicated surgery. He wants to have someone else's body parts put in him. Also, he can have the satisfaction of killing the embryo that he conceives somehow. I don't know how much further you can go down to, again, a debased mind. Clearly, we're dealing with someone on social media that truly should not have a platform. That truly, if you wanted to censor someone, if you wanted to ban someone for having an opinion that is just gross, this would be the person. Anyone who advocates for that is insane.
I haven't used the other word that was moron, where it's moros. And I think it's in 1 Corinthians, Jacob, if I'm not correct. 1 Corinthians, I think.
We have a teaching on it.
Yeah, I think I got it from you, but it's like moros, it's like moron. So, I mean, Paul was pretty straight up when he talked about these things, in Romans and in 1 Corinthians. So pretty straight up. The mind is not there. It's not, it's just so twisted.
Yep. I remember years ago, the Lord gave me a teaching. I was doing a conference in England with Dave Hunt. Dave was still with us at that time. It was Dave Hunt, myself, and Chuck Missler, as I recall. It was the three of us, and maybe there was a fourth, I forget, but it was in England. And the Lord gave me a message called The Death of Reason.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it, and we filmed it and thing. And Dave Hunt really, well, I'd say he liked it, but he certainly agreed with it. And I prognosticated about certain things. But even as one who prognosticated about these things, I'm astounded at the rate at which it's happened.
Mm. Yes.
I mean,
it's revelation.
I guess other people, I'm not saying I'm the only one who saw it coming, but I certainly saw it coming. and Dave Hunt acknowledged that he believed I was right. But now it's here.
It is. It is.
David, anything else you'd like to add to this wonderful topic?
Well, I having listened to Jacob for 25 or 30 years now, 30 years possibly, he has been so right on so much. But I never thought that I would be seeing his prognostications come true.
Exactly. Me
I
too.
thought they would be beyond, I would be out of here and this stuff in the world would get so bad. But we're seeing just, I mean, the world is being set up for possession. I think people's minds are so open to allowing anything. I mean, I know that possession in my lifetime of the devil possessing people has been kind of a rare event, but I think with the coming of Antichrist and his angels and all this, I think the world is being set up for possession on a level that will probably be unprecedented. Jacob, I don't know if you want to add to that, but
well, I would
that's
say
just
that
kind of an opinion.
the kind of mass demonization that we witnessed at Nuremberg and the early Nazi rallies of Hitler, when he'd give those speeches and the people would go absolutely ballistic in acknowledging Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, that kind of mass demonization. We saw the same kind of spirit, demonic spirit, in Iranian Islamic fundamentalism with Ayatollah Khomeini in the 70s after the Shah fell. We saw that same kind of mass demonization. I think that kind of mass demonization that we associate with Hitler and that we associate with Iranian Islam, I think that is going to happen. Mark my words. You're going to see that kind of mass demonization taking place in Western post-Judeo-Christian societies in our lifetime.
Mm.
I mean, I'm seeing people.
I say that with trepidation.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not claiming to be a prophet, but I see it coming. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've seen more people saying "Hail Satan" and using these the Longhorns things and actually, I think they're ready to invite him in and to ask him to take over. It's
What was that store that had that demonic costumes for little kids? Was it?
Oh yeah, in Salem.
No,
Yeah.
it was a chain store. Was it?
Target? Target
Was
had
it
that.
Target, yeah.
Target.
Yeah, but it's not just Target, man. It's they're spreading this stuff everywhere, Jacob. It's
I had a list of stores. Yeah, I had a list of stores. There was about 30, 40 stores that were all part of this. It's crazy.
plus all sorts of independents you probably don't even know about.
Yeah, and that too. I'm talking about big stores.
Yeah,
that were
big
part of it.
chains.
Called Glastonbury. It's a new age. It's a new. It's like Finhorn in Scotland. There's one, and there's one in England called Glastonbury, where there's an annual rock festival.
Yeah.
But it's very much a new age occult type place. That dedicated to it. That's its raison d'etre. That's the reason it exists. And you see one shop after another. These shops all over, one after another, with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It just reminded me of something too. I'm pretty sure you've seen this too, Jay. There's a drink out there at the moment. I think it's called Demon Drink or Demon Brew or something like that.
Yes, it's water.
And she prays the demon into every bottle. She walks around. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I am blissfully ignorant of that, and I hope I never run into that.
Yeah.
It's getting popular. Yeah.
I think they think this is their time, and they're coming out in the open. And
I guess they're right about that.
yeah. I saw one bit of good news today. BlackRock and one other large fund are cutting back on their ESG stuff. I don't know what to make of it, but maybe they're losing some money and it's hurting the bottom line. I hope they lose even more, but no, I hope they cut back on a whole lot of ESG
Right.
project.
That guy Fink is a terrible person.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
of course.
All right. Well, this concludes the front section of this episode of Catching Up with Jacob. Davey will be asking the questions that you've turned in, and I will be back to finish up with the last few stories that we have. So if you want, please get over to Rumble, get over to Moriel TV, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you. Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.